We've been inquiring into and exploring the nature of doing good. Gampopa was a physician monk, a wandering mendicant who healed wherever he could. But one day he went into the presence of the great saint Milarepa, and he asked of Milarepa, "Please, will you guide me on the path to enlightenment?" And Milarepa told Gampopa, "Go into isolation, meditate, meditate, meditate." So following this advice, Gampopa went to a cave higher up in the mountains of the Himalayas, into a cave where many other great beings had spent isolation. And he spent 3 decades there. But after 3 decades, he was still unenlightened, unfulfilled. So he came down the mountain to Milarepa and told him of this. After Gampopa told Milarepa what advice he had given him, and Milarepa said, "Did I tell you that? I was completely wrong." And of course, poor Gampopa was completely shattered, confused. But after 3 decades of isolation and meditation, that's all he knew. So he went back to his mountain cave and sat. But now there was no purpose, no goal. And it happened. So he dashed down the mountain to the cave in which Milarepa himself rested. And Milarepa, as soon as he burst in the door, said, "Yes, yes, I know." And that is the story about that dervish who went to the great Sufi saint and said, "It is known that if one learns the most great name, then one can heal mankind and mankind's woes. Will you teach me the most great name?" And the great Sufi saint said, "Before learning the most great name, you, like myself, must pass a test. Are you willing?" The dervish was more than willing, eager to do whatever was asked of him. And the saint said to him, "Go to the town gates and remain there for a day, and return to me in the evening and tell me the most significant happening of the day." So eagerly the dervish went off to the city gates and remained there for the whole day. When he came back into the presence of the great sage, the sage asked him, "Well, what were your perceptions of the day?" And the dervish replied, "Well, the most significant happening was when an old wood chopper brought a load of wood to the city gates, and when he tried to enter, the guards there demanded that he pay the tax on the wood, but he had no money. So he begged the guards to let him enter and sell his wood so that it would enable him to pay the tax. But they refused. They took his wood from him and beat him so that he went away. And said the saint, "What was your thought about this?" And the dervish replied, "My thought was that if only I knew the most great name, then the fate of that old man would have been different." You see, said the saint, the test that my master gave me was to see whether I was still a responsive emotionalist, doing good for man. Before one can learn the most great name, one must realize that to do good is to do good for all of life, all of that time. What do these two stories mean? In pondering our inquiry, our exploration into the nature of doing good. What is your experience now?
Well, in the first story, he was meditating to reach enlightenment, and that's what prevented him from reaching.
Yes.
You just have to do it for the hell of it.
Right.
And in the second story, the man thought that he knew what was to be done at the time, instead of actually, so it was coming from him instead of from the universe telling him what to do.
Right. Mm. So can we relate this to our own state of being? Where do we rest in this now? Do we still have a goal, a purpose for living? Where do we rest? Doing good. There was a saying that was quoted to her friend who came the other day. And that saying is, die whilst you're alive and be absolutely dead. Then all that you do will be good. What does this mean for us? Are we dead yet?
We're working on it. I'm really struggling with why he wasn't helping the woodshopper, because if I see things, then I feel I should be able to help, like an accident, or if I see something injured, I pick it up. If I don't see it, it's not up to me. But if somebody gets beaten up or needs some money, I struggle. Why not help in that moment? If it's doing good, yeah, he wouldn't be going out of his way to do good. It's just in front of his eyes.
Right.
So, I don't know.
And what do you see that as? What is the thread of your life then? What is the purpose of your life?
Well, I'm probably judging the situation, but it's just in me that I would try to help. But I don't necessarily see it as being, in that moment, a do-gooder when there's an incident like that. Like then nobody will stop at traffic accidents and everywhere, yeah. Or other situations, I really struggle with that.
Yes. Yes.
But if I go out and look for opportunities to help all over the place, like I'm doing as well, I'm volunteering in a lot of places, that's
All right.
might be more doing good than.
Yes. So this is an inquiry, this is an exploration. So if we do our own inquiry, our own exploration into where we're at in the relationship for doing good, then that's the purpose of these stories, isn't it? Not to give us some end. It's there. So we have to look at that, isn't it, and examine it in our own way.
One thing I noticed in those stories was that people see